the listeners and the followers that come on and watch this know that we often have a veterinarian and an attorney, and then Scott and myself come on and we talk about veterinary malpractice. But for as long as I've known Scott, he's always been well aware that the problem goes much further than just the veterinary world. And it trickles down into boarding facilities, daycare facilities, grooming facilities, dog walkers, um, even people who are just, you can go on these apps and you can get certain .coms, and you can get babysitters that come and take your dogs, and you can leave them at their house. And so the problem with our animals not being safe and secure is just much wider than just veterinary malpractice. And we continue to hear these stories, and it's really hard. And tonight is going to be a very, very difficult thing for all of us, because we brought on Zach to share a very, I'm sure, very difficult, hard story for him to share with us about what recently happened with his dog. So Zach, I'm just going to let you tell the story. If you could
Okay.
just share with everybody what happened.
So on May 31st, my wife and I had decided to take a little break. We're both registered nurses and been working really hard through this pandemic. And we wanted to go to the Keys. We couldn't find, usually I take Glocky with us, um, but we couldn't find a hotel that accommodated dogs. So I have used rover.com in the past, and honestly, I had uh, good experiences with two or three seaters in different states. We have traveled in the last 3 years. Uh, so I found one that replied to me, and we talked, and I recognized her because I have used her about 4 years ago, a couple of times, but it was run with her daughter and son-in-law, and they kept Lucky inside the house. They do have a nice setup in the outside, and they had a room in the back that I couldn't see because there were other dogs in there. She didn't show me. She said there's other dogs in there. Supposedly it was air conditioning. Uh, so I trusted her because I have used her in the past once or twice. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. So we went to the Keys, and about 6 o'clock that night, she calls me. She say something's going on with Glocky. She passed out. My first question to her was, "Did you leave her outside all day?" And I had given her instructions because she had knee surgery um, about a year and a half ago. And I say, don't let her run with the dogs all day because obviously the heat, but her knee, keep her, she can play, but keep her, give her breaks. Um, so she said, oh, she passed out, now she's having bloody diarrhea. Immediately, I knew it was heat stroke. Those are the clinical presentations. Um, so I said, pull her off, give her some water, and immediately take her to the bed. Um, that night, that was around 6:30, 6:30. The vet called me around 8:30, and I don't know this vet. We just moved back from North Carolina, so about 2 3 months ago, and she just had a checkup about 3 months ago. I even did blood work on her. I mean, she was a healthy 5-year-old that we rescued from the Humane Society here in Florida. The sweetest dog you can ever meet. She loved kids, she loved dogs, and I guess that was her demise because she loved playing with dogs. Um, my guess is they didn't supervise her. She played with the dogs until she basically dropped dead. Um, so the vet said, we're going to do everything we can. I don't know if she knew the vet or it was an emergency vet. Um, all I know is he said, we're going to pump her with fluid, lactated ringers, which is um, they're fluids, but they have antioxidants, and it's a more nutrient um, setup. So, and they give her antibiotics as well. Um, but he said her chances of making it is less than 50%. At that point, I had a feeling that she wasn't going to make it. So I started driving back that night late in the morning or early in the morning. And he called me and he said she passed about 5:15 in the morning. Um, so needless to say, I mean, we don't have kids. She was our kid. And, we're devastated. Um,
What did the veterinarian assume, I guess, without, I guess I should ask you, are you planning on having a necropsy done?
so this is the bizarre part of the whole thing. He mentioned to me several times, um, about 3 or 4 times. He said the clinical presentations, the background that you're giving me, and the CITR's giving me, and the blood work pinpoints to a heat stroke. Now, he said heat strokes are hard to prove. I'm not a vet, so I'm not sure. I mean, if everything pinpoints to a heat stroke, it's got to be a heat stroke, but I'm not a vet. So after she passed, a couple of days after, actually, because I contacted the Davie Police Department, and the officer that is handling the case, she's an animal control code enforcement officer. She said, call the vet and ask for necropsy. So I did. And his response was, well, I cannot do an autopsy because she's frozen already. I said, I'm not asking for an autopsy. I don't want that. I want a necropsy. So I don't know if he knew the difference or he was playing dumb. I'm not sure. I mean, I have all the medical records from them, but he never wanted to do one. I'm not sure why. Um, and I talked to a couple of friends are vets and vet techs, and they all right away say, yeah, that's his. It's just the clinical presentations of his stroke.
Right.
So, it's kind of frustrating because I don't know the vet. I never used them. I don't know if she did use them before. I knew him. I'm not sure about those circumstances, but
Seems interesting to me to
yeah.
try to talk somebody out of doing a necropsy. It seems odd to me to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, I asked him, like, I need you to do this because I mean, he knew at that point that I contacted the Davie Police Department, Animal Control, and their cases open.
I
Um,
actually, we normally have a veterinarian on here. I don't actually know the answer to that. Did you at all look to see if that there was any truth in the fact that we couldn't do the necropsy once the dog was frozen?
well, see, a necropsy is the difference between that and an autopsy is the necropsy is what his clinical uh, view of the case is how the dog presented, is the labs that he did, and that's how the necropsy goes about. So I don't know why he couldn't do it, honestly. Um,
See that I don't. I think there's a difference in maybe my understanding. So for me, my understanding is a necropsy is an autopsy on a dog, and an autopsy is just a term used for humans. So it's the same procedure. I don't know if someone wants to. I've just never heard that a necropsy is not the same as an autopsy. That's why I'm kind of confused a little bit. So
yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, I've always always. And I've spoken to Dr. Haddad, we're talking about necropsies and the last things that we talked about. They're the same as an autopsy. So the only question there is there any truth in the fact that you can't do a necropsy, given that they placed the dog somewhere without, somewhere that would prevent them from doing it? I don't know if that's the answer. I just find it interesting that he tried to talk you out of doing a necropsy, and I am sorry that that happened,
Yeah.
because that could lead you to some answers, hopefully. Um, but I think that what you already know is pretty
I
clear. Did
mean,
you know what your dog's temperature was upon arrival to the veterinary hospital?
he said it was under the core because she was pulling off, and then she became started breathing, having labor breathing at that point. Uh, but it was under, and he suspected it was higher at one point and then come down because she was basically uh, going to last stages. Also because she was bleeding, she was having a GI bleed as well.
Gosh, but you don't know what the temperature was upon arrival to the veterinary
I can,
hospital?
I mean, it is in my paperwork. But,
Yeah. Um, we just had somebody write in that her dog had a necropsy after they had frozen, so it can be done. So it's
yeah,
thank you so much, Arlene, for mentioning that. That's one thing I didn't know if it could be done. It seemed to me that they could, but I wasn't sure. But yeah, I think that this might go a little bit deeper than just what happened. But do I don't want to push people into doing things they don't necessarily want to do, but I would question the relationship between that veterinarian and that person that
yeah,
was.
and that was my thought because
Yeah.
um, his answer was, "Well, she's frozen now, so I can do it."
Yeah, well, it's looking like that's not a true statement. So I would research why he's trying to prevent you from finding out. The thing is without the necropsy, we can't prove why she died, and that's what we talk about all the time, Scott. Right? The cover up, the constant cover up,
Oh, right.
the
Absolutely.
absolute constant cover up that goes on is beyond me. And here's the thing: the situation where this happened, you know, it would have been horrible for this girl to just say, "Hey, I I screwed up. I thought they were having fun. I didn't think it was that hot outside. Oh my God, this happened." Um, is far better than the cover up and what goes on, because it doesn't stop, and we continue to have these animals dying from heat stroke amongst other things. So I'm going to share another story that is on here, and I'll try to go through it a little bit because I really want our listeners to understand how prevalent this is. So, my wife, this is a story, Scott sent it over to me that he received. And it says, on 8/12/21, my wife dropped our beautiful, kind dogs off for a groom for the first time. Um, I'm not going to read the name of the businesses at this time, but one of our pups was a Newfoundland, the largest, kindest, gentlest giant. We went to pick up our dog in the afternoon. However, he was not in the back of the shop, but in the front of a van alone. That I don't even understand why someone would do that. The owner told us that Samson was hot, so he moved to the front of the shop. We were also told by Greg that the floors were slippery, and this was why Samson could not use his back legs to stand. Sadly and beyond words, we had to say goodbye to our very special boy because he suffered a heat stroke while being groomed. His temperature was 109.5 when he arrived at the veterinary hospital. Um, the normal temperature for a dog is about 102, 102.5. So 109, I am so sorry. Uh, I like, this continues to happen and we have to stop it. And so the first thing we need to do, and we know we need to do, which is why Scott and I are here every other week and sometimes more and doing all that we can do, is because we just don't want to continue to see this happen. Zachary, can you tell us How old was your dog? Tell us a little bit
Well,
about. Can you share a little bit about him with us, please?
her, so she was rescued from the Humane Society of Broward County 5 years ago. She was about 3 months old when we rescued her. Sweetest dog. I mean, she loved kids, she loved dogs. Um, we moved to Colorado. She loved the snow. Her first snow, I have a video. It's so funny. She loved playing in the snow. She came with us every. Certain trips we couldn't take her, so we found good sitters. Um, and well, I guess Robert really dropped the ball on this one. Later, I found out that she was also a felon. She had fake dentistry in her in the same property. But anyway, Glocky was an amazing dog. She was kind of beyond her years. She was very wise, perfect dog. She never got me in trouble. Um, she just kind of felt my vibe. If I was tired, or if I was sad, or if I was, happy, she kind of went with the flow, you know, and was always there for me regardless of what happened. And she had a good life. She I treat her like I have treated all my dogs, and a big double lover. She even had a waterbed.
That's dangerous.
Which was so good.
How old was she?
5.
She was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just such a blessing that you're able to talk about it and share the story and continue to, hopefully you'll continue to stay with us. And not only the Joey's legacy has just been so amazing because not only are we able to share our stories with each other, but also help each other get through some pretty tragic stuff. So for those of you who don't know, I own a boarding facility, which could be really dangerous for me to say. We are not loved by a lot of people. The stories continue to come out of dogs dying in boarding facilities and grooming shops and daycares and dog walkers and dog trainers, even that are babysitting dogs and stuff. So, but I always tell this to Scott. That's why I'm the perfect person to talk about this because I've been on both sides. I've been accused of some horrible things that were not true, and but I also have seen some horrible things. And so I think together with Zach and Scott and myself tonight, what we really want to do in memory of all the dogs, and in particular right now with Joey and Glocky, is come up with some solutions and help you guys. And that's where I'm going to come in, is try to help you guys a little bit to understand what we can do. But Zach, I'm going to take you back a little bit. You said that animal control showed up um, when you to the place. So let's talk a little bit about the place. Was it a business, like a big entity or business, or was this a private home?
It's a private home. They have about, I would say it's close to an acre. Um, and they have an area where it's all fenced in. They have a play area for the dogs. Um, and then they had that, supposedly that inside room with fans or air conditioning, where the dogs stay at night. And um, but curiously, her answer was, um, well, she could have gone in the room because she did admit she was playing all day in the heat. I
Oh,
said, well, that's not what dogs do.
she's saying she had access to come inside.
Yeah, but dogs don't have a rationale of consequences.
No.
It's like if you put a bag of food, the dog is going to eat the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like if she was going to play with the dogs in the heat all day, she's going to play all day. Their job was to supervise not only my dogs, but there were like 5 or 6 other dogs.
No, you're
And,
absolutely right. Uh,
they
I
had,
a lot about my own dog. If I took a tennis ball and threw it across a busy freeway, she would chase it. They don't have
yeah.
the ability to think in terms of if I do this, this could happen. Uh, and so that's why we hire people and we
to
hope that
supervise. And she sent me some pictures after the fact, and it was so ironic because she looked exhausted, and at one point she was just sitting there. One of the pictures, she's just sitting, panting. And it's like, obviously, she was, and I don't know what time those pictures were taken. They could have been, because I dropped her off at 7 in the morning. They could have been taken, you know, in the
yeah,
morning, and by the afternoon, she
right.
would have been a lot worse.
When animal control showed up, does this, I know every state is different, but in the state of California, private homes cannot have more than 3 dogs. Was she licensed to even have dogs
So,
there?
so this is what happened. So, the Baby Police Department, the officer is an animal control, but she's also the code enforcement officer. She knew the property because she's been in trouble before. She said there's a lot of code violations on that property. Let me look into it. And then animal control, they just sent me an email a couple of days ago where they closed their case because they're letting the baby police handle the whole thing. So she said there is they were cited for the code violation, and the officers tell me business should not be there, it should not exist. So my hope is, and I think they're already down, but my hope is that they're getting shut down soon if they're not yet. Um,
So rover.com they're not vetting these people and making sure that they have licenses and how many dogs are there. That's not
Obviously not, and obviously, I mean, she's a felon, and she was um, in their platform. So,
okay. So do you know how many dogs were on that property at any given time? Could you guess?
well, few. I mean, the pictures that she's sent me, there were at least 5 or 6 dogs that
Okay.
day that I
Okay.
saw.
That you could see.
That I
Do
guess in the picture. I don't know how many there were.
Okay. And do you know how many people how many people lived in the house?
So before, years ago, when I used there a couple times, it used to be her daughter, son-in-law, her sister, and her. The son-in-law moved out, so I don't know how many people are there anymore. She said she had a couple of people help with the business
Okay.
when I talked to her before I took Glocky there.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking these questions is because I desperately want people to understand how to protect their animals and why certain things are better ideas than what some of the choices that were given are and why. So um, these apps that we have that allow us to just now I know people are going to think I'm going to defend boarding facilities, and I want to make this very clear. I'm not going to say you should only take your dog to a boarding facility. I'm just going to point out, because I own a boarding facility, I want people to think that. But I do want to point out the problems with private residences. And one of those are, as we're finding out, is that a lot of them aren't licensed. Now the license isn't very much. I could tell you that. I have a kennel license and they hardly ever check me. And when they do, they usually call me ahead of time and tell me they're coming, which is a joke, right? Like, hey, we're going to be there on Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Well, great. That's great. So I'll just make sure everything's perfect Tuesday at 2 o'clock. But when they're not licensed, at least with a license, a kennel license, there's somebody checking at least every once in a while, that something might get caught. So that's one of the problems we got to be really careful with when we're doing that. But the other is, and why I've always been concerned about these types of places to take your dogs to, is that as a business owner, I hire people, I train them, and they work for me and they get a paycheck. And so there's some kind of like, now I have great people that work for me. So I just do, they just happen to love them. But to bring animals into my home, for example, and maybe my brother isn't a responsible person, there's other people in those homes that are possibly not going to be as responsible. So when I talk to people about that, I tell them often you have to be really careful because there's kids that might be in that home. There might be an elderly person who, you know, forgets and leaves the door open. There's a whole bunch of other factors that take place. So, um, and I'm not making excuses for those situations to happen. I'm just saying that there's better choices and we should talk about them tonight to make sure that these things don't happen. And one of them I would say is I have always said this, the best place for your pets is your home with somebody that you trust. And that's coming from somebody who owns a boarding facility. That is the best place for your animals, but those aren't always options that are available. So then we have all these other options. So then we have to just keep narrowing it down into what is the best thing that we can do because people are still going to want to travel and sometimes we have to use these facilities, whether a grooming facility, a boarding facility, veterinary hospitals. So I'm gonna let you guys, as I please interrupt me. I'll continue talking a little bit so I can help. But Zachary, I know that you did an interview with what news station was it?
Channel 7.
Channel 7, and that's going to be airing when?
They're gonna do a introduction on Monday, and then the story goes live on Tuesday.
Okay, and how did you feel about that interview? Do you think it was
Well,
pretty?
if anything, it's gonna create awareness.
Right,
Um, so, and hopefully people will, you know, reach out and, help the movement of creating better circumstances for our pets.
right, because part of the problem is there's not, even if you were to, and I don't know what your plan is doing as far as trying to get some kind of resolution to this, but there's not much that's going to be able to be done because the laws don't protect Glocky. They didn't protect Joey. They don't protect our dogs. And so even if this goes to court, um, there's not going to be a whole lot we can do. And so we have to change those laws, right? So the more speaking out that we do, we're going to be able to do something. Did the owner or of the facility, has she reached out to you at all or no?
She did the first couple of days. She apologized. Obviously, I don't think she did it intentionally, but it was definitely negligence from their part.
Yeah.
They should have supervised my dog, all the dogs.
Has she
Um,
said that? Has she said, I'm just really sorry I messed up, or
she apologized, but she never took responsibility 100%. She said, well, she could have gone in that room. So at that point, I knew she wasn't supervised. If you say, okay, the dog could have gone in that room, that means you're not watching the dog,
right?
you know,
Yeah,
because,
unfortunate that what worries me when people don't take responsibility is because that's why it happens again. Because
yeah,
you just think that a dog's going to walk in the room and cool himself off, especially dogs that are high players, and that's what you say
yeah.
about him. He loves to play. So you have to recognize, as a boarding facility, you have to recognize, hey, this dog might
I
need to take.
mean, it takes common sense. Anybody will know when a dog is exhausted and overheated. But if you're working with dogs, I mean, you should recognize that, you know, half an hour before it even happens. You know,
Let me
Carrie.
tell you,
Okay, I'm
like
sorry. Go
we
ahead.
talked about Samson. So Samson died in a grooming shop from heat exhaustion, 109 temperature. It's unbelievable to me. Um, but a lot of times it's not that the boarding facilities don't recognize that it's happened, that like if they see the animal in distress, they recognize it, but by then it's usually too late because they're either overrun, they have low staff numbers, they're not paying attention. But most people, obviously, yeah, it's common sense. This dog doesn't look right. Most people, but by the time that happens, it's usually too late, and that is the number one problem. I will tell you, the number one problem in boarding facilities is understaffing and lack of education together. understaffing and lack of education. In your case, with 5 dogs and 1 person, I wouldn't call that over um, taking too many dogs. I don't think they had too many dogs. But one of my other concerns with people who are at home watching animals is they get busy doing other things,
Yeah,
right?
they're
And
not there watching them. I mean, now I realize that.
yeah, they start watching a movie, they get on the internet, like other things are happening, and they think, oh, the dogs are just in the backyard playing, which is another reason why I get very concerned about these types of boarding facilities, because there's so much that goes on in my home, day-to-day stuff. If I had to be responsible for animals in my home, it's far different than when I'm clocked in at work and have a staff doing it. So, um, have are you planning on going forward with this in any kind of a lawsuit, or are you looking to have somebody?
I have contacted about 5 different lawyers. Um, Unfortunately, this time I don't have. They all want a retainer or payment up front, and I don't have the funds right now.
Right?
And I even told Scott, I am, whatever happens if somebody wants to run with this case, um, and whatever compensation I'm donating 100% to an animal organization. Um, you know, we can split half of whatever animal organization they want, and then half for you guys for Joy organization. It's more about the um, principle for me.
Yeah.
I don't want any of the money. I will donate the whole thing.
Carrie, you made a point earlier about if this went to court, there isn't much on the other end. Uh, and generally, that's very true. In this, if code enforcement decides to shut down the facility, you can
Yeah.
count all the loss
Yeah.
as the damages.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
far greater punishment than litigating the case or even settling the case, which,
Yeah.
we'll find if Zach is find one of our attorneys to um, settle it with the insurance company. That's how that could happen. But we definitely need more accountability. I have a question for you. Is there a informal or formal ratio that uh, boarding facilities use in terms of one staff member for every X number of in the facility?
No, there's no formal or
Okay.
informal. It is. I actually have spoken with animal control in my area, and I asked them that because there's so many facilities around me that are taking 150 dogs, and they've got like 6 people that work there. So I asked that question to animal control, and they said, and mind you, every county, every state is different, but in my county and in my state, at that time when I asked, which wasn't too long ago, the law was, well, when we say law, in order for me to have my kennel license, the rules were that I had to have 1 person in the room, but it didn't have a limit on how many. 500 dogs and 1 person.
Yeah.
Do they have to have any formal training? Do they have to have anything? No, it was just 1 person had to be in the room. And so I did, for anyone who's listening, and I posted it on here, but a while back I did a podcast on questions to ask your boarding facilities, and we came up with, there was 4 of us in the room, and 2 ex-vet techs, a person who worked at a boarding facility, and we did kind of a little roundtable, and we talked about how to solve these problems and questions to ask, and we came up with what we thought was right. And there's so many variables, and that's where it becomes very hard for them to say you need 1 person for 5 dogs, because 1 person for 3 old senior chihuahuas that don't get out of the bed is different than 1 person for 5 large dogs who are roughhousing and playing. So there becomes these you have to kind of figure out what is comfortable and how you do it, and how are you housing them. Is it big dogs with little dogs? Is it senior dogs with senior dogs? Active little dogs like Frenchies, like French bulldogs, for example, they play really, really rough, and you have to watch them very closely. They overheat like that. Newfoundlands overheat very easily, as we're unfortunately seeing with Samson. And so I think it's going to be really hard to come up with a set in stone ratio, but we do need that. We need some kind of guidelines. But then comes the problem of who's going to mandate it? Who's going to go out and check? Because checking once a year isn't going to do you any good. So here's my solution that I tell people when it comes to that. And everybody that's listening, please do this and do it diligently. And just like I'm telling you, call your boarding facility, ask them how many dogs do they board. You're going to get a range of answers. You might get, oh, anywhere between 60 and 70, or you might get, we only board 20, or we only board 15, or we this or we that. Then I want you to wait a day and call back again, get a different person on the phone and ask them how many dogs do they board. You're going to get a different answer. And the reason you'll get a different answer is because there really is no limit in these places. They don't limit themselves. They don't teach their staff to limit. They just keep taking them and housing them and putting them in the back and kennels and all sorts of stuff. And so you want to ask that question, and everybody should know how many, because if your staff doesn't know how many, then when do they stop? When do they stop taking dogs? And you need to know, if you take 20 dogs, we take 20 dogs. My facility takes 20 dogs. On the weekends, we take 27 dogs because we don't do daycare on the weekends and we don't do grooming on Sundays. So we can take 27 dogs. I have 25 staff members that work. Actually, we're at 26 right now. I have 26 staff members that work for me. So you have to know these answers. How many people work here? Total, you want to know how many people work there, because if they say 5 people, now you have to think in your head, 5 people work here. They don't all work all 7 days a week. They're not all working 24 hours a day. And what if somebody gets sick? So now I have 5 people and you board 80 dogs. Run. That's not the place you want to go. I think that a safe number, and we came up with, you want to have like one person for every 15 small dogs, little tiny dogs, is actually pretty safe depending on how much space there is available. But I don't think, if you don't have, depends on what they're doing. Are they being caged? Right? So you either, like I said, Scott, there's so many variables. Are these caged dogs? Are they free run dogs? Are they being rotated in and out? Because if you have 10 large dogs that are caged all the time, then one person is plenty. But one person for 10 large dogs in a big quarter of an acre property where a fight could break out is not enough. So it really comes down to kind of understanding what the owner of the facility thought process is, I guess, so to speak, and how are they dealing with it? Are they on the premises? A lot of times when you get owners who, and I see this all the time, people open up these facilities, they put in a lot of money, and then the owner, a year later, the owner's gone. They hire staff and they're usually young and inexperienced, and then the owner's not around. You really want to have an owner that's invested and wants to be there and is hands-on, but it's difficult. It's I just know that you want to ask, and you want to ask more than one person on 2 different days and see if those answers match. Because if they don't know how many dogs they're going to board, then how would they know how many people they should staff if they don't know next weekend there's going to be 80 dogs? They don't know how to do the staffing on that. So you have to be really careful with that. Cameras aren't, I think the facilities should have cameras. But don't get me wrong, cameras aren't going to save your dog. They're going to help, but a lot of times, and animal control is actually the one that told me this, facilities that put up cameras so you can watch your dogs all the time, a lot of times that camera is on the spot they want you to see and nothing else. So it's not an indication other than you can kind of see your dog and know what's going on at that time. But it continues to happen. As far as heat stroke goes, I would say, especially during the hot times, you need to ask the boarding facility, the grooming facility, because let me tell you a story that happened to us just recently. We had a bulldog come in. I think I shared this on our Facebook page, but we had a bulldog come in to us, and we don't put dryers on any dogs. Well, I shouldn't say any dogs. Sometimes we get a dog who's afraid of the dryer and he's scared and he it's the only way we can dry them, and we don't want them to be freezing. But a person should be in that drying room at all times. So I'm not against cage dryers, but they need to be used properly. But in the case of this bulldog, we didn't have a dryer on him, but he didn't like other dogs. So he got himself really worked up in the cage, trying to, every dog he could see walk by, he got himself worked up, and he started to get too hot. But we know the signs. And so we were able to cool him down immediately, get him in a situation. We called his mom, told her to come and get him. She came down, and everything's fine. But if people don't recognize the signs, so when you're talking to your grooming facilities and your boarding facilities, don't be afraid to question them. I'm always amazed when people don't question me for the first time, when they just call and say, hey, how much is it to board your dog here? I love getting the clients who are doing their due diligence. Well, what about if this happens? Or what if there's a fire? What would you do if there's a fire? You know, they should know the answers to these things. What if my dog has a heart attack? Because that has happened. That's happened in my facility. It had nothing to do with us. And what is the protocol? What's going to happen? You know, and you have to ask these questions. How many people work there? Is there somebody there at night? A lot of people don't ask that question. Is there someone there at night? But it continues to happen. And one of the things that Samson's mom brings up is about the cage dryers and who's drying your dog. Cage dryers are not dangerous if they're used properly. They can be a good tool for a groomer. Like I mentioned, a lot of dogs get very scared of the hand dryers because they make those noises when we go back and forth, and dogs can go into panic attacks. But you can't just set a dog on a cage dryer and just leave him there and walk away. And it sounds like that's what happened with Samson, and I'm so very, very sorry. That never. These are so preventable. They're so preventable. And you got to know your breed. So know your breed. No, Zach, it sounds like you did the right thing. Don't let him run around. You told her. You voiced your concerns, which is what you need to do, and be adamant about it. Listen, my dog will not stop playing. It's hot out. I want to make sure that he's indoors. And yeah, it breaks my heart that we have two people right now that we're talking about doing this. So that's where it leaves us, Zach, I think, is exactly what you're doing, is going to the news media. Did you contact rover.com and talk to them at all? Is this person?
Yeah, I did. Unfortunately, one of the mistakes that I made is because I have used her years ago, and I contacted her through Rover, communicated to Rover, but I didn't book her to Rover. She wanted cash, and I figured, it's okay. That was a big mistake, but I still contacted Rover.com, and they had a conversation on file that we talked about booking her, uh, and they still shut her platform down. I sent all the information to them, the medical records, the fact that there was a link to a news media that she was a felon. Um, so I sent that link to them, and so they shut her platform down. Um, but yeah, I have done that in the past, with suitors that I use often. Once we become comfortable, they'd rather take cash because Robert takes some of the fees out, and I mean, I guess that was a mistake that I made, but looking back, but they did shut her platform down from Robert.
I know we learn from our mistakes for sure. Obviously, yeah, because if she had booked through Rover, you would have. That's where the insurance probably comes in. So
Yeah, they would cover the bed bills and all that stuff.
Yeah, so Kathy Barron had asked if the boarding facility had insurance. My guess is no. It's a private. She didn't even go. It wasn't done through Rover, so it doesn't sound like she even had a kennel license. Is what it sounds like. Animal Control's trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. On another level, I've always kind of wondered, like people who use these apps, right, and then get ask for cash on the, I always wonder about their integrity. Like, so, you know, it's just a little side thing for me for this girl that's making me more and more angry as you continue to speak with her. Things that she has said is kind of making me a little angry. But so going forward, are there things that that I know we talked a little bit about boarding facilities and grooming shops and things that people can do, and I'll go over some more things and some more problems and concerns. But are there things that you learned or wish you could do different? I mean, I know there's a lot of things you wish you could do differently, but is there something that you could help our listeners know that they should never do? And
Well, if you're gonna use, like I said, I have found gray sitters and rubber in the past. I lived in with Glocky in 3 different states. Um, I never had a problem. Obviously, they dropped the ball on this one. But and she had great reviews on rubber too. So that's not even, like if you go through the reviews, she had good reviews. Um, so I ask more questions. Um, Honestly, if you can find somebody to stay in your house with your dog, it's probably the best thing. We just moved back here, so I don't, anybody that could stay here. Um, or find somebody that you trust that just have to stay in their house. I don't know. You go back and forth and like, what's the best way to, if you have to take a trip and leave your dog with somebody.
well, I say that too, and I've had people call me and talk to me about wanting to board their dogs, and they ask me, you know, what do you think's the best thing? And I answer the same way: is in your home with someone that you trust is the best thing for your animals, because there's so many other factors that come in play when we're boarding our animals, and just taking an animal out of their environment and putting them into another environment can put some stress under them. So one of the things I also try to make sure people do if they can, obviously you've moved in different states and so it makes it a situation that you can't, but if you can, you really, really want to build a relationship with your boarding, your groomer, and your veterinarian, especially though your groomer and your boarding facility. And I'll tell you why. When animals stay with me that I've been taking care of since they were, 10 weeks old, if they are acting weird, I know it because I built that relationship with them. Something's off. This isn't normal for him to act this way. Um, but sometimes people don't build those relationships and they, go to the next new place or they get a coupon in the mail or whatever it is. You got mad at the groomer, this and that. Build a relationship with your boarding facility, with your groomers, so that they can alert you or they can recognize. I can't tell you how many times we had a dog boarding me one time, been coming to me for years, and then all of a sudden one day one of us went to go pick him up and he tried to bite us. That's not normal. So we had to take him into the vet, and we did, and he ended up having a little block in his stomach, and it was hurting him when we were trying to pick him up. But I don't know if that had been the first time he had been there, I would have just thought he was nervous and scared. And so building relationships is also super very very important. You want to do that as early as you can. If you find yourself in a situation where you're going to be boarding your dogs. Also think it's really important to know the background of the person who's watching your animal. Just from years of me working in the industry, all of the information that I've gathered and put together and what I know about animals serves me every single day. Every single day, I go back to my experiences. And yet, there's a lot of people who are going on these apps or they're opening up facilities and groomers. And that's why we can't get ahead of it, because I could guarantee you, I hope, that the girl that was involved in this situation, this will never happen again, because hopefully it was devastating enough for her to pay closer attention if they're even going to allow her. Hopefully not. Hopefully something's going to happen. And if she didn't even have a kennel license, hopefully something's going to happen there. But the problem is we keep getting new people, new boarding facilities, new people opening them, and so you have to be really careful. Cost is not a factor. you could have the most expensive boarding facility on the planet and it be run the worst, and you can have the cheapest boarding facility and it could be run the best. Smell is not an indication. That's another one I tell people. Just because the place smells nice and looks nice does not mean that in the back your dogs are being, put in situations that they shouldn't be put in. And just because the place maybe smells a little bit, I know that sounds crazy to say, but you may have somebody who's just, for whatever reason, the most loving person, but maybe they just don't clean very well. And not that I'm saying you should take your animal to a place that isn't clean. I'm not. I'm just saying that you have to know what is most important, and your dog's safety is number one. Absolutely. Your dog's funky haircut is way down on the totem pole. So if you have a groomer who is absolutely making sure that your dog's safe, secure, happy, healthy, not shoving him in cage dryers, has lots of people working there, all of those things are in place, but the haircut's a little wonky every once in a while, that's last on your totem pole. Safety is number one. And it's really, really hard to find that, to understand it and to find out what goes wrong when someone's there. And probably your best indicator is how many people work there, because the more eyes on your pets, the better chances that if something goes wrong, and sometimes it's not the facility's fault. Things happen. I told you, we've had situations. We just had a bulldog with our situation that wasn't of any fault of ours, but we just happened to know what to do. And so you have to ask those questions if they know what to do. Heat stroke is number one. If you're going to a grooming facility or a boarding facility, especially if you're in areas where it's hot, but it doesn't have to, and I can't stress this enough, heat stroke does not have to be hot in order for heat stroke to occur. So in the case of this bulldog who he just kept working himself up into the point where, and it was a warm day, but it was not hot. So you got to understand where heat stroke comes from. So I'm kind of find myself in this weird speechless situation, Zach, because I'm just so devastated for you and your family and Samson and all the dogs that continue to have this situation go forward. So rover.com couldn't really do or say anything because it wasn't booked through them. Do you know if they're going to take her name down? Were they interested at all that she's still using their app? Oh, we might have lost that.
I think Zach might have. Yeah, because
Do you know the answer to that, Scott? If he was able to, if Rover even cared?
I do not know the answer to that. No, I don't know how far he got with them. I don't know how much interest they took in the whole situation. I don't know at this point.
God, I hope they took some interest in it. I don't know. I'm sad to hear that they're not vetting their people and understanding. You kind of think that a big company like that would be doing that.
I would be, if I was rover.com, or not I engaged this person or referred this person to Zach in the past, or even if I didn't refer them to Zach now, I would still have an interest and maybe, like you said, take their name off the list or at least consider the possibility.
Yeah. Well, if no other reason, they should take her name off the list because she's scamming them.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
I mean, she's
True.
scamming
Good. Yeah, of course. Good point. Yeah.
like,
Absolutely. Yeah. Good point. Right.
she's pulling
Yeah.
a scam.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Did you have some?
I mean, this is one of those cases where, there's would be no doubt some sort of settlement for costs and whatever else, but this case can go a lot farther if they shut the facility down, because then you consider the penalty for what happened to Glocky.
Well,
it's future revenue.
Right, but this is her home. This is her house. So I don't know. That's why there's so many other factors that play here.
Right. Well, if they, Broward County is because I lived in Broward, and pretty tough there. They're pretty strong. So I wouldn't be if they throw the book at her to the extent.
Yeah.
So to be continued. we're going to work with Zach and do as much as we can to help him get through this.
I'm
Yeah.
back. I don't know if you
Yeah,
guys can hear me.
definitely. So we had talked a little bit about some of the things that I find are, we always talk about getting the laws changed, right? Pets are
Right.
not property. We need to get it. We talked prior to this meeting here right now, and who wrote that article? I forget who wrote the article we were talking about.
Oh, that was, you mean the one where the AVMA said
It was the AVMA.
not,
Okay, that's,
it was the AVMA. What do you expect?
I know, but okay, so for those of you who aren't aware of what we're talking about, the AVMA, Scott posted a article written by the AVMA who would like you all not to try to get the laws changed, because then the prices of your veterinary care is going to go up. And I mean, when I read that, Scott, like I said, at first I was so angry, and then I was just happy because I thought, oh, you guys are feeling the pressure. We're going to get these laws changed, and you don't like it because you don't want to take responsibility for what you're doing. And
You know,
guys can hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you now, Zach.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
hear for a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm action for a minute.
You know,
Gotcha.
when the day comes when non-actions are permitted and the value of negligence rises, maybe soars, the AVMA will have a major issue on their hands, because you're going to have a kind of an exodus from the profession if it gets out. No veterinarian is going to want to be a veterinarian if they know they can be sued to the hilt. That loss of membership from the AVMA means a lot in terms of dollars for every veterinarian. Another, just follow the money. That's what it's all about in pretty much every area of life. And the AVMA is concerned loss of revenue by veterinarians leaving if they are vulnerable to be sued for non-economic damages. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Well, I just think it's, when we read that, I thought, you got to be kidding me. So you should be able to do whatever you want to do, and we shouldn't, because the cost of the care might go up.
Yeah, they would like that, Carrie. They'd like it very much. About suing the vets, we got it under control. We know you love your companion animals. We know you love them, but don't think about suing one of our members, because potentially, say this, but it's a big term down the road.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Just like all of the veterinarians that are involved in Joey's Legacy, and there's some out there too that aren't necessarily involved in Joey's Legacy that are good vets. We say that all the time, and there are good boarding facilities, and there are good groomers. We say that all the time, but none of those veterinarians are going to sit. They know that so long as I'm not negligent, so long as I don't do malpractice, so long as I run my facility with the right amount of people to help me, and I train my staff, then I have nothing to worry about. So
and what I always say is, overwhelming majority of people that join Joey's state that they've never had a bad experience with a veterinarian, to the bad actors that think it's a much better deal to lie to the pet parent about what happened during a surgery or a procedure. A lot of our honest, probably half of the people in the group have said to me, if the vet had just been honest with me about what happened, I'd still feel a tremendous and profound loss. But I probably maybe one day could have figured out a way or found a pathway to forgiveness. But because they decided to, denigrate me by lying to me, it's on, as they say.
Zach, how do you feel about that? Do you think that it would have been easier? That you're still in it, you're still deep in it, but do you think it would have been easier if this girl would have just said, I messed up and whatever I can do to make it right, I'll do. Do you think that would have been better for you?
Right now, no.
No.
Perhaps,
I
yeah,
agree. Early in the stages of what you're going through, nothing is
yeah.
gonna help.
I mean,
But
I miss my dog every day, and
yeah,
we quick story. So somebody saw my post, same post that I posted on Joyce. She's our new friend, Lily Cooper. She moved to Florida, single mother, and she's gone through some difficult times. And she had got a puppy for her daughter's birthday, and she contacted me and she said, "I know it's early, but I want to find a good home for this puppy because I'm going through some hard times." And so we got a puppy. So that we got a puppy a couple of days ago. He's sleeping right now,
oh,
but that kind of helps with the pain, and
sounds
not
like
to replace Glocky, but
the puppy's got big shoes to fill.
yeah, but he's a good boy.
Oh, what's his name?
Well, the daughter have named him Pongo. So I kept the name, but I added Loco because he's a little crazy. So Pongo Loco.
Pongo loco.
Okay.
Oh, good, good.
Good.
Well, I'm just so thankful, Zach, that you came on here and you were, willing to share that story. It's just such a horrible story. And to Samson's parents, thank you also, for coming on and sharing that story. If anyone ever, I'm just going to put this out there, if you don't feel comfortable talking to boarding facilities and groomers and asking the right questions, I'll do it for you. Call me, I'll call them, and I'll let you know whether I think you got a good spot to go to, because it's really, really hard. Like, I could give you the list of questions. I do encourage you to watch that or listen to that episode that I did years ago on this podcast. It's there. It says to help. I posted it on your page, Scott, because it gives you all of the different things you can do to and it's not just, sometimes I've had people say this to me, well, I'm just going to leave him at the vet hospital because then he's safer. And I'm going to tell you right now, and Scott will tell you that it's not always the case. You can't just think because someone's a veterinarian that your dog is safe in their care. You have to do your due diligence. And how do you even know what that is? I bet Zachary could tell us. How would you even know what questions to ask? Who would ever think to ask, what if my dog starts to experience heat stroke? Who would think to ask that?
Yeah, you don't think about that kind of stuff. You just assume that they're doing this. They've been doing this for a while. They have good reviews. That they know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
You know?
Please don't. Reviews do not. At this point, reviews are bought constantly on these review sites, and the reason I know that is because I'm going to just tell you, I swear right now, I don't have a single bot Yelp review on any of my stuff. I promise, and I actually am proud that I can say that. And I have some bad Yelp reviews. You're welcome to read those too. But I get contacted probably once a week from companies that want me to pay them to write good Yelp reviews for me constantly. So a lot of those reviews that you're reading are not real reviews. So you have to just forget about that, and you have to talk to a personal person. Someone that's worked there is another really, really good indication. Of course, that comes with its downside. If you have a disgruntled employee, I had one of those pretty bad. And she worked for me for about 3 days, and I fired her because I thought she was on drugs. And then she left me a bad Yelp review. And she probably would tell you that I'm a horrible person. But you have to forget about your Yelp reviews or your Google reviews, and you have to talk to somebody. You have to make those phone calls. I'm telling you right now, I will call boarding facilities for you, groupers for you, and ask the questions. You just need to contact me. God, Zach, I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry that this is going to be with you forever. And
Sorry, I'm letting the puppy out. I'm sorry again. I was letting the puppy out.
so sorry that this is gonna be with you for years and years, forever to come. And but I'm thankful that you and Scott both are doing what you can do. And I think ultimately, because taking, you know, it's hard when you don't have the money to hire these attorneys, which is why Joey's Legacy is so great, because a lot of the attorneys can take on some of these cases and they can help us and they can have veterinarians look at it. I wish I had the money to do it, because I really feel like there's something there within that veterinarian to try to talk you out of doing the necropsy. That to me is the worst part of this whole thing, is that's a cover up to me, which is worse than any of, I mean, I don't want to say worse than obvious Glocky passed away, but to talk you out of doing that, I can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah, he just said I can do it.
Yeah,
And
well,
I said I need it. I need it because I mean he knew that I had contacted the police at that point and animal control. That was a couple of days after, and that's
yeah,
the officer was the one that suggested that I get one if I didn't have one. So that's why I called him, because I'm in this position, so I didn't I didn't think I needed one. I didn't even think that such a thing existed.
yeah.
Um,
That's probably one of the biggest things is that we try to talk about a lot on here is what do we do when we find ourselves in this situation? Get your records, get a necropsy. We constantly say that, and why we want to keep encouraging people, because how would you know
yeah,
who
I mean,
I
it
mean,
was tragic. I was
yep,
just missing my dog. I wasn't thinking about, I did think about, okay, I need to shut this place down so this doesn't happen to anybody else.
yeah.
Uh, but, I didn't think I needed all these steps. And obviously he wasn't willing to anyway. So
Yeah, that's something's not right there. So I don't know. Well, I think we're coming up on a little over an hour, so we're gonna sign off here. Scott, is there anything you want to say before we head off?
No, but I can tell you, well, yes. What I can tell you is uh, Zach did exactly what I wish every single victim of negligence and malpractice would. We can help you with the vet reviews. We can help you with the attorneys in many cases, but you can always help yourself by exposing the bad actor, the
Yeah,
deeds of the bad actor, and this helps the public become aware of what happened, where it happened, and it's up to them to make a wise decision to avoid that location, even if it was just a one time situation. You don't know that until you do your own due diligence, and maybe you'll find a few complaints on the vet board's website from past occurrences. So exposure until we get laws in all 50 states acted to protect our animals, exposure of the bad actors is going to be your best option.
well, Zach, it goes even further when you do expose. We do talk about this. There's two other things I want to point out that are happening that is, in memory of Glocky, is that hopefully other boarding facilities are going to hear this story, and somebody's going to go, oh, do we have a policy in place? I don't want that to happen to us. I don't want to happen this,
Right.
hopefully they're thinking about the dogs. But it's not just exposing the bad actor, but it's hopefully pet owners, I'm sure are going to become a lot more aware of what heat stroke is through this, and how can it happen to them and how can they prevent it. So it goes so much deeper than that when we talk, when we communicate, when we go to the media, when we do this. And it's, it's a great tribute to your dog, just like Scott
Yeah.
starting this Scott starting Joey's Legacy. It's such an
Right.
amazing tribute, and we're so thankful that you did it and you reached out, it's going to
Yeah.
make a huge difference.
And I didn't even know where to start. But I call. I mean, the entire week I even called from work. I couldn't work. Um, and I call everybody. I make tons of calls. There's a lot of red tape down here to get through the right agencies and a lot of emails. But I got those three things going, and for Glocky, and if there is a lawyer out there that wants to take the case, take your fees, and I will donate the rest. So I don't want any compensation. I want to donate it to you guys, and whoever they think is, as long as it's an animal organization.
Well, hopefully we can get, maybe Scott can get us you hooked up with the right attorney. I know one of the attorneys right now is working on another case. Scott, I don't know if it's through you, but it's another case with heat stroke down in Florida. It's a whole nother situation at boarding facility of heat stroke. So I
Yes.
think it's just happening so much. And so thank you for sharing it. And Scott, thank you for starting Joey's Legacy, because you're just this huge difference that is
Well,
coming out with all of you guys.
we've only just begun, Carrie. We hope to do a lot more.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off of here, but real quick, I do want to say, anybody who wants to know what questions to ask their boarding facilities, their grooming shops, their veterinarian hospitals, contact me. I'll let you know. I've been on the inside for a lot of years. I know what questions to ask, and I'm willing to ask them for you. If you want to listen to that podcast, it has not just about this, but abuse happens in boarding facilities too. Physical abuse happens. So look up, make sure that people have their correct licenses. It doesn't do much. I'm not going to lie. It doesn't do much, but it does something. It does something. So that's the first thing you want to do, is check and make sure that all their licenses are up to date. Make sure that they're doing everything legally and on the up and up. To me, like, people who are paying employees under the table and things that just, that way, to me is kind of not a very legit business. So they probably aren't going to have insurances and all that other things they need to do. So you really want to just check into the people that are watching, just like you would your kids. Ask the questions that you would ask if you were dropping off your children, for our parents out there. Other than that, Zach, thank you so much.
No problem. So I just want to show you something. Pongo is eating my shoe. Pongo, no.
So,
You're,
Zach,
Yeah,
we can't see you, but it sounds like he's bringing some joy back into your life.
yeah. It's crazy.
That's amazing. If you could maybe take a picture of him and put it on Joey's Legacy so we can all see it,
Okay.
that would
Thank
be
you,
great.
guys.
You're
thank
welcome.
you, Zach. Thank you very much.
All right, you guys, have a good evening. Scott, have a good evening.
All right.
You
See you soon.
take
Okay.
care.
Bye-bye.